Welcome to Bekasi. Bekasi is the city with the largest population in the province of West Java and is located on the eastern border of Jakarta. It is the home of the Patriot Candrabhaga Stadium and the 4 teams that call the stadium its home venue. The most recent team to relocate to the famous stadium is FC Bekasi CIty. They are a team that have a relatively short history in Indonesian football. They were founded in 2014 as Putra Ijen FC. Since then, they have undergone 6 name changes, only being renamed FC Bekasi CIty in 2022. They have also been relocated in that time, moving from Pati to Bekasi. The club lists YouTuber, rapper and influencer Atta Halilintar as one of their owners. The club will start the 24-25 season in the second division of Indonesian football, Liga 2, but they will have high ambitions of promotion to the top flight. That is where I come in. I'm going to step into the role of manager and attempt to transform the fortunes of FC Bekasi CIty. I'm going to make it my main aim to turn them into the biggest club in Asian football. Salamat siang and welcome back to the channel. Recently, I was going through the analytics of my YouTube channel and I noticed I had a massive 35.6% of my viewership coming from Indonesia. So that got me thinking, what can I do to say thank you to all of my Indonesian viewers? Well, this series is my thank you to you. To kick the series off, we're going to begin on our first day in the job at FC Bekasi CIty. We've been welcomed to the club by owner Atta Halilintar. He says, welcome to Bekasi CIty. It's great to have you here. As part of the induction, you'll shortly be given a welcome pack. Then you'll go through the club's visions and objectives. Congratulations again. So FC Bekasi CIty are a team in its infancy, only around 10 years old, being founded in 2014. They are a half-star reputation team. They will play in Liga 2 for the 24-25 season. Using the database I have, I think we're in Group 3 and we will have all the up-to-date transfers. The team will play in the Patriot Candrabhaga Stadium, which is a 30,000 capacity stadium. It was built in 1984. We will have basic training facilities, basic youth facilities, and limited youth recruitment to work with. As I said, a team in their infancy means that they have not yet won any silverware. We are going to have the chance to be the first manager to put that silverware on the board. We move forward and look at the team that we have inherited. So they have been playing a basic 4-4-2 system. They have Bankara in goal. They have Fadia, Renan Alves, Chiori and Wibowo as a back 4. You've got Sirigar, Agung, Pratama and Auguste as a midfield 4. You have Mosquito and Junaidi up top. As I mentioned, we have an up-to-date transfers database. So that means that players such as Renan Alves and Mosquito have just been signed by the club. We will have all of those players available to us. The only thing I'm not 100% sure of is the registration for the first team in Liga 2. So whether we're going to get to play all of the foreign players that the club has signed, I'm not 100% sure. But I do think we're going to make a few changes to that lineup. And I think we're going to go with a slightly different system going forwards. Now then, on to the club visions and the board cultures. So our owner wants us to strive to make progress on and off the pitch. That's fine. We aim to become the biggest club in Asia. Actionable objectives, work within the wage budget. Shouldn't be a problem. I don't think we have too many players who are on high wages anyway. Although once we get into Liga 1, that is where that might start to become a bit of an issue if we take on a few foreign exports who want a larger amount of money than the local players. 5-year plan. End of the current season, be competitive in the Piala Indonesia. Then by the end of the 25-26 season, my contract is up for renewal. They want us to continue to be competitive in Liga 2 going forwards. In terms of what the supporters want, they also want us to strive to make progress on and off the pitch. They want us to reach the Liga 2 Region 2, it says, but I think we're in Region 3, third place playoff, get the better of our rivals, Persikasi, if we happen to play against them. A more in-depth look at the squads that we've inherited reveals that the first team squad is actually really well assembled. We have a number of players in each of the positions, although I do feel we're probably 1 or 2 players light, and I can go and address that hopefully in the first transfer window. Looking at the development centre to look at the youth squads. So our under 21s does have a number of players, a lot of attacking options, not many defensive options or goalkeepers. And in terms of the under 18s, we also have a small squad, but we do have more defenders than we do attackers in the under 18s. Hopefully we can have a sift through some of the players and see if there are any players that we can promote or maybe loan out to get some experience. In terms of what is going on with the finances at the club, £283,000 in the overall balance. We have a wage budget of £21,976, currently spending £13,158 of that. There are £140,000 available to us for transfers. And there would be a number of key signings, the first of which was Chihiro Kanagaya, the Japanese defensive midfielder coming to us from Tokoa University. Then there were a number of local free transfers, the first of which was Rinaldi. Then we picked up Mudasia. We also picked up Fate Alfin. We would then go and buy Awan Setho. We were looking for an experienced goalkeeper, so we purchased him from Bayankara. We would get Alexandra Etienne on a free transfer. He has previous experience of playing in England with Boreham Wood. And finally, we would get ourselves a bit of a steal as we sign Ethan Kohler. The 19-year-old comes to Indonesia to play for FC Bekasi CIty, having previously played in America and Germany for Werder Bremen. So overall, the transfers were pretty balanced. We would spend £145,000, but we would sell £68,000 worth of players, with Fathia, Chiori, Sirigar, Janadi, Auguste and Suzuki all leaving the club. That means that going into our first game of the season, this is roughly what our starting lineup will be. So we have picked out a 4-3-3 to play with across the first season. We'll have Setho in goal, Alfin, Rinaldi, Renan Alves and Susanto. We'll have Kohler, Konagoya, Ferroni, Mudasia, John Clay and Mosquito. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to play all of those players because of the registration rules for Liga 2. But across the season, hopefully, using the windows that we have, we can get all of those players some first team football. Our league campaign would start off with some crazy results. In the first game, we'd build up a 2-goal head start just to let Percy Tara pull it back to 2-2 before winning the game late through Mosquito. In the second game, we were far more convincing. We managed to put 4 goals past Percy Carbo to give us 3 more points. And then we ran riot against Persib, scoring 6 times in our massive stadium. However, we did it in front of no fans. After 12 Liga 2 match days, we come to the end of the first round. We find ourselves winning Region 3 with 33 points, having played 12, won 11 times and losing just once. We had a 45 goal difference and those magical 33 points. We would win our region by 5 points from PSIS, who would finish in second, and also qualifying for the next round is Percy Carbo, who finished on 16 points. So we beat all of the other teams in our region. The only team to beat us would be PSIS, as we would go down 2-1 to them in the first round. The second phase of Liga 2 would begin just like the first, with 3 wins in a row. Firstly, there'd be a 3-0 victory against Mitra Kuka. That would be followed up by a professional display to take all 3 points from Nusantara. Finally, another crazy game, as 6 goals were scored in a 4-2 thriller away from home against Badak Lampung. After all 6 games in Liga 2 Phase 2 were complete, we would end up winning Group A quite convincingly. We'd gain 16 points from our 6 games, winning 5, drawing 1 and going undefeated in the second phase. We'd have 13 as our goal difference and getting 16 points would put us forward into the playoffs to see if we can gain promotion into Liga 1. Looking at the schedule, you can see that after we won those first 3 games moving into the second phase, we'd continue winning games all the way up until the Indonesian Cup quarter-final. We'd get knocked out there against PSBS, and our only draw would come on the final match day against Badak Lampung, and our reward for getting through to the semi-finals is a 2-legged affair against Percy Carbo. The first leg against Percy did not go to plan, as we would lose 1-0. But in the second leg, we would remind them of why we had just won both phases of Liga 2. We would overturn that 1-goal deficit with a devastating 6-0 victory to go on into the final. That means only a 2-legged final against Persipura stands between us and promotion. The first leg of this final would go like an absolute dream. We had an electric start to the game, and that would see us take an early lead. We would build upon that lead and end up running away to a simple 4-0 victory in the first leg. If the first leg was simple, the second leg was anything but. In a game which we should have controlled, it ended up going crazy. There were 7 goals in total, and we would lose the game 4-3. That didn't matter though, as we end the season by handing the club its first ever trophy, as we win Liga 2 and gain promotion to Liga 1 at the very first time of asking. Let's begin the wrap up of Season 1 by looking at the season review for the 24-25 season. You can see our Liga 2 trophy proudly on display there on the main screen. In the new arrivals, our signing of the season would go to Alexandre Etienne. The 22-year-old would have a fantastic first campaign with us, playing in a total of 21 games. He would score 16 times. He'd also chip in with 8 assists. He would score himself a 7.8 average rating. Fantastic first season at the club. In terms of the season's results, we would go on to gain promotion to Liga 1. We would win both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of Liga 2. We would then go through the semi-final and the final to gain our promotion to Liga 1. In terms of moments to remember, our biggest win is a 9-1 victory against Percy. Our match to remember is also a victory against Percy with a 4-0 win. Goal of the season, that goes to Mosquito for a goal scored against Mitra Kuka. In terms of the finances at the club, well, firstly, club reputation. We started off as a half-star national reputation club. We're going to finish the season as a half-star national reputation club. Sponsorship deals, there have been no new sponsorship deals across the year. Our revenue is up, the broadcast revenue is up, corporate and hospitality is up, competition prize money is up, and matchday commercial and retail is up. In terms of the merchandise sales, £339. Money well spent. Our lineup across the season would average out to be Seto, Alfin, Rinaldi, Alves, Susanto, Cola, Ferroni, Konagoya, Mudacia, Etienne and Mosquito. In terms of the accolades, I would go on to be Indonesian League 2 Manager of the Month for September, November, January. I would also win Manager of the Year. We'd have Mosquito as the fans' player of the season. Young player of the season would be Alexandre Etienne. Signing of the season would also go to him. Mosquito would get goal of the season. He would be the top scorer. Most assists would go to Fait Alfin. Alexandre Etienne would get most player of the match awards. Highest average rating would go to Mosquito. Renan Alves would get most passes completed within 90 minutes with 56. So, overall, a fantastic first season at the club. We would go on to win promotion to Liga 1. We're going to go right back to the beginning of season number 2. So, it is June 2025. We have not long been promoted, and we are now officially a Liga 1 team. Looking at some of the club information, our reputation is a 1-star national team still as we move up into Liga 1 and become more established and certainly play in some of the Asian Champions League football. I do believe that reputation will begin to grow quite quickly. Looking at the finances, it says we are a 3-star finance team. I'm not too sure about that. We will have a look at the finances in a minute. If we had that amount of cash, we certainly would be putting the money into the academy coaching and the youth recruitment, because both of those are poor at the moment. Looking at the key personnel at the club, our club captain at this point is Chihiro Konagoya. Our key player is Mosquito, but spoiler alert, he may not be at the club for too much longer. And our hot prospect is an academy player that we are bringing through into the first team. He is Adi Moat. He has already played his debut and he's already making an impact in the first team. Looking at the squad, we are pretty much going to begin season number 2 with the squad that we ended season 1 with. Now, there are a few gaps that are going to form. We have a few contract issues too, with a couple of players being out of contract already, and there are contracts that we are looking to extend by the end of the season. But in terms of the overall depth of the squad, it is quite good, and hopefully we have a good building block with what we did in Season 1 to begin to really push this squad to where we want to go in terms of not only having an impact in Liga 1, but maybe even challenging some of the top teams straight off the bat. To do that, though, we are definitely going to need to improve the squad, and to do that, we need some money. But looking at the finances, that 3-star really is deceptive. We only have £25,000 in the bank. We have a transfer budget of £56,000, which is interesting, and a wage budget of £19,000, but we're only spending £13,000. So with that transfer budget of £56,000, let's see what we can do. The answer, quite honestly, was not a lot. We did go out and buy some players, but we didn't actually spend any cash because of the situation that the club is in financially. I didn't feel it was right to spend £56,000 when we didn't even have that as a club balance. As you can see, we wouldn't actually let go of any players in this transfer window, which means we weren't generating any cash, but we did manage to sign 3 players. The first of which was Huey Ono. He's a striker that we managed to buy from Risho University. He came in on an amateur contract, which means that we didn't have to pay a fee. And I think he could settle in really well. He has good finishing and first touch. His heading is good. He has good technique, good composure. And I think for the standard of football that we play, he could go on to be a bit of a diamond in the rough, and one that we certainly could polish when we are looking to build our team. The next player that we signed was another free transfer, and we went to our favourite country, Brazil. We managed to pick up Caio Maciel. He has potential ability of 5 stars. I know that is against my own team, but it certainly is a big step up and an improvement on the players that we already have in our squad. We got him from America MG. He comes with blistering pace. He has good agility, natural fitness. In terms of his determination being 15, work rate of 12, technique of 13, passing of 12, dribbling, finishing, first touch. He has everything that is needed for a wide player. Fortunately, he can only play in one position, but luckily for us, we play with an attacking midfielder on the right-hand side of the field. So, at the age of just 20 years old, I really think that he's a player that we could hold on to and moving forwards, developing to an absolute star in this league. And the final player, we bought another foreigner, Owen Silva. He's a player that plays on the opposite side to Caio Maciel, and he is a left-sided attacking midfielder who is from America. 18 years old, comes in with a 4.5-star potential ability against my own team. But the good thing here is that we signed from FC Dallas Juniors, which means that he didn't come with a fee attached. But look at some of his attributes. Pace of 12, acceleration of 16, agility of 15. He has good dribbling with 14, passing of 11, technique of 13, good determination, work rate, and teamwork. I think he's a player that could go on to be an absolute star. So that means that we have managed to improve the squad a little bit. We rejigged around a few of the things in terms of the players that have run out of contracts. We still have a couple of contract issues, which isn't too bad going into the season. But I do think that we are set and we are ready to go into the brand new season and give it our very best shot in Liga 1. Our first game in the top flight would be an absolutely crazy affair against PSKC. The game would swing back and forth in the early stages until we finally got some control. Goals from Ramadani, Sutopo, Santoso, new boy Maciel, and a hat-trick from our brand new American Owen Silva would secure us a 7-3 victory. Up next, we would have a far calmer game as we faced off against Persic. A 2-0 victory was secured thanks to goals from Maciel and Conor Goya. The third match of the season was a bit of a strange one. We would dominate the game and win by a scoreline of 5-1. 2 goals each from Maciel and Ramadani were accompanied by a goal from Silva. However, we did suffer the sending off of Rinaldi. Our first 3 league games would go like a dream, but the next 12 league games would show that it certainly was no fluke. After we would beat Persebaya 5-1, we would go on to beat PSM, Bayankara, Persis and Persipura. However, we did have a slight blip as a 5-3 defeat against Arima did halt us in our tracks. It was a game that we never truly had control of, and with a bit of sloppy defending and not taking our chances, we would go down 5-3. However, that blip wouldn't last for long, because straight after that, we would go and win our next game. We beat Persita 2-0, beat Persija 1-0, we would draw 1-1 with Borneo, beat Persicarbo 4-2, have a 0-0 draw with Derby United, and win the last two games before we came back against Persib and PSS. That means that after 15 league games, it was a dream. We are top of the league, and not just top of the league, we are top by 10 points. At this stage, we have played 15, we have won 12, drawn 2, lost just that single game, have a goal difference of 28, and we have 38 points. Looking at some of the stats, you can see Maciel has had an important impact on the team. He has 9 goals. He has the third highest average rating. Owen Silva with 7.58 as an average rating also has come in and been fantastic. He has 9 assists. Everything at this stage is going perfect. Jumping back into the league action, and we are now flying. In match day 16, we would go on to score 7 times in a game for the second time in the season. We absolutely dominated this game. Yui Ono would steal the show as the Japanese striker scored 4 times, with Alfin, Ronaldi and an own goal rounding the scoring out. In the next match, the goals would continue to flow as we put 4 past Burrito Putera to gain another 3 points. The goals in this one would come from Maciel, Silva, Kohler and Abbas, who would also go on to get himself sent off. Just as it looked like we would blow everyone away though, we would go and throw in a duff performance, as an organised Persita would hold us to a 1-1 draw. After we would have a slip up and drop points in that 1-1 draw, our league form actually became quite patchy. In the very next game we would beat Persija 3-2, but then drop points again with a 3-3 draw against Persik. Then would come the Indonesian Cup second round. We would go through over 2 legs, 4-2 on aggregate. But sandwiched in those games was a really disappointing game against PSKC, where we would lose 3-0 and nothing went our way. We couldn't even beat 9 men. After that, back in league form, a 1-1 draw against Derry United and a 1-1 draw against Persib meant even more points dropped. Back into the Indonesian Cup, third round, first leg we would win 4-1. We would draw 2-2 in the second leg at home, meaning we would go through 6-3 on aggregate. But in the very next round against Persipura, we would have a 2-0 advantage from the home leg, lose the away leg 2-0, and end up going out of the competition on penalties. After that, we would actually pick our league form back up. PSS would get a 4-1 beating, Persipura would get a 4-0 beating, but Arima once again would cause us problems. We would lose 2-1 at home in a game that we really had no control in. Yui Ono did score the goal for us, but 2 late goals from them would seal 3 points against us. Next up was Persis in a 1-0 victory, and finally Persebaya would go down 2-1 in Liga 1. That means that after 28 games, we have already secured our playoff spot. We have won 19, drawn 6, lost 3 times now, have a goal difference of 41, and are on 63 points. In terms of the stats for the league, Yui Ono is now our top goal scorer with 18 goals. Owen Silva is still having a high average rating season with 7.56. He has 17 assists. What a gem of a player Owen Silva is turning into. Even though it looks like he's not developing with us, it seems that he really is coming on leaps and bounds as a footballer, and is contributing well in a league where he's probably a bit stronger than it seems. We also have a good defence in terms of clean sheets. We would have 10 of those. So we are putting ourselves in a really good position as we're coming towards the end of the season. What will happen? Can we stay on top of the league? Let's find out. So the run of league games to the end of the season is now complete. And despite the fact that we beat Persebaya 2-1 at the end of the last run of games, we actually were pretty inconsistent all the way to the end of the season. We would end up with 4 draws on the bounce, a 0-0 against Borneo, 2-2 against Persicarbo, 1-1 against Bayangkara, and and a 2-2 draw against PSM. The only silver lining for us was we would win the last 2 games of the league phase with a 5-0 victory against Bali United and a 1-0 victory against Burrito Patera. Now, we already knew that we had qualified for the playoffs, but the team that will join us will be Persib, and Dewi United. We would win the league phase by 8 points, winning 21 of 34 games, having a 47 goal difference. If we have a look at the competition in a bit more detail, we can see that we didn't actually have one of the best top goal scorers. 19 was our best with Yui Ono. Owen Silva would go on to do himself brilliantly in the first season with a 7.58 average rating and 18 assists. We'd have Setho getting 13 clean sheets, meaning that our defensive unit was really, really strong. That means that with the league complete, we would now jump into the playoffs. The playoff, as always, would be a 2-legged affair. We would get drawn against Dewi United. The first leg would be played away from home, but goals from Silva, Ono and Etienne would put us in a commanding position as we win the first leg 3-0. In the second leg, it was more of the same, as a dominant performance resulted in a 4-1 home win, as goals from Silva and a hat-trick from Ono powered us into the final. The final of the Liga 1 Championship would be against Persib in a 2-legged affair. We would kick off with a home match where goals from Subtopo, Silva and a brace from Ono would put us in a commanding position after a 4-2 win. In the second leg, away from home, we would play with a lot more caution. Knowing we had one hand on the trophy, we would play out a 1-1 draw. This gave us a 5-3 aggregate win, which would see Bekasi CIty crowned as champions of Indonesia for the very first time. We have conquered Indonesian domestic football in back-to-back seasons. With the league title now wrapped up, the only thing left to do is have a look at the season review and then start planning for season number 3. So let's look at the 25-26 season review. There is our Indonesian League title proudly on display for everybody to see. In terms of the new arrivals, we would only have 3 signings, but what a 3 signings they would be. In this season, we have completely rebuilt our attacking unit. A player for the left, a player for the right, and a player up the middle. Starting off with signing of the season from Dallas Juniors, it's Owen Silva, our 19-year-old American winger. He would play 33 games, 21 goals, 20 assists, a 7.58 average rating. Then we would have Yui Ono, our striker from Risho University. 36 appearances, 28 goals, 6 assists and a 7.26 average rating. And finally, our Brazilian 21-year-old Caio Maciel from America MG. 39 appearances, 13 goals, 11 assists and a 7.11 average rating in a fantastic season. So in terms of the season to remember, we already know we won the league phase of the Indonesian League. We then would go into the playoffs, where we beat Dewi United in the semi-final and Persib Bandung in the final. The board are absolutely delighted to register our first ever top-flight Indonesian League title. In terms of the moments to remember, our biggest win was the 7-2 win against Bali United from early on in the season. Our match to remember was the 7-3 victory against PSKC. And the goal of the season, that would go to Ferroni. Provided a perfect finish to an excellent team move by scoring a powerful effort from 22 metres in a 4-0 victory against Persipura. In terms of the finances for this season, so in terms of the club reputation, we still haven't grown the reputation as of yet. I'm presuming after one league title, that is to be expected. We certainly now need to make an impact going forwards into continental football by playing well in the Asian Champions League. In terms of our average annual revenue, that has gone up in terms of sponsorship, broadcast revenue, corporate and hospitality, match day, commercial and retail. The only thing that went down was our prize money from competitions. In terms of the merchandise sales, we sold £1,003 worth of merchandise. 52 shirts were sold, and the players that were popular was Ono, Silva, Kola, Setho and Conor Gaia. In terms of how our team lined up throughout the season, this is pretty much a fair reflection. We had Setho in goal most of the time, Ramdani, Rinaldi, Sutopo and Abbas. We have Kohler, Ferroni, Konagoya, Silva, Ono and Maciel. We have a few players that are coming through into our first team from the youth teams. We really are looking to build upon that as we go forwards. In terms of the accolades for the season, so I was manager of the month for July, August, October, and also won manager of the year. In terms of the awards for the players, so we know fans player of the season was Owen Silva. He was young player of the season, signing of the season. Goal of the season went to Ferroni. Top goal scorer with 28 would be Yui Ono. Most assists would go to Silva. Most man of the match awards to Silva. Highest average rating to Silva. And Sutopo would have the most passes completed per 90 minutes. In terms of the record breakers, Ono for goals in a season, most league goals in a season, most goals by a player in a match with 4, most goals by a player in a league match, most assists for Owen Silva, Setho, most clean sheets, Silva most man of the match awards. Kohler would have the worst discipline with his 1 red card and 9 yellows. Most league appearances by a player is up to 60 for Ferroni, and most league goals by a player is now 26 for Ono. So, we have come to the end of the season review. We know that we won the league. We have our trophy on display. Bekasi CIty came along better than anybody would have expected and carried the mid-season form all the way to the finish line. In terms of our timeline, this is where we are. Ono breaks records, prolific Ono, Liga 1 triumph and the managerial award. Before we wrap this up and start looking at the preparations for season number 3, there are a couple more things that I want to look at. The first of which is the finances. Now you can see that the finances are really difficult. £36,000 in the bank balance, £71,000 available for transfers and £19,000 in the wage budget. Now we're not spending anywhere near the amount of wages that we can, but those two figures in terms of the overall balance and the transfer budget are really not good to look at. Hopefully, now we have won our first Indonesian League title, if we can qualify for the Asian Champions League proper and we can have a good run in that competition, hopefully it opens the door in terms of sponsorship and revenues. We start to get that match day money coming and maybe we can start to move the club forward in terms of getting off of that bottom line where we are just struggling from month to make ends meet. Maybe, who knows, one of the 3 players that we signed at the top end of the pitch, maybe they will catch the attention of a bigger club who will come in with a big money offer. And maybe if we move one of them on, it helps us in the long run. Speaking of the squad though, the squad is looking good as we go into season number 3. We have managed to secure most of the contracts that we wanted to secure. There are a few players that will probably be leaving the club at the end of their contracts in a few weeks' time. But if we can go out and get replacements, and certainly going to try and think outside of the box like we did in this season. Maybe if we can go out and buy a player from America again. Maybe if we can go out and buy another player, maybe from Japan. Some of those leagues, or even the Brazilian leagues in terms of Serie C and the reserve teams for some of the bigger teams, you can certainly find diamonds in the rough in those types of teams, and we could polish them and maybe bring them together and help us to go on and certainly defend our title and push in our quest to be the best team in Asia. It's the 1st of June 2026. We have not long been crowned champions of Indonesia for the very first time. We're going to have a little look at what's going on at the club. Starting off on the club info page, you can see that our club captain will remain Chihiro Konagoya. I feel he's the perfect, consistent type of character that we need to hold the captaincy, and he has done well in his time at the club, so he will retain the captaincy for this season. Our key player is Owen Silva, a player that we bought in the previous season, and he had a fine first season at the club. And our hot prospect at this point is Adi Moat, a player who we brought through our youth system and has now broke into the first team at the age of just 17. Looking in the top left-hand corner, our reputation, we are still a 1-star national reputation team, and that is fine. We will build that as we get into the bigger competitions. Our finances, though, seem to be on the up. We are now ranked as a 3-star OK finance team. Looking at the training facilities and the youth facilities, they are both still basic, and whilst that is a bit alarming at the moment, As soon as we get that bigger cash flow coming in from those other competitions, it will open up doors where we can start to improve the facilities going forwards. In terms of junior coaching and youth recruitment, they too are poor or basic, and it's something that we're going to have to build on for the future, and just hope and pray that we get 1 or 2 decent youth players coming through when those intakes take place. Looking at the squad for the upcoming season, the squad is running a little bit light on numbers. Now, it does look quite a condensed squad. We do have a number of goalkeepers, we have a number of wide players and defensive midfielders, we have 3 strikers on the books. One area that we are a little bit light on is centre-back and potentially wing-backs. So maybe we are going to go out and try and secure 1 or 2 in those positions. But looking at the team, I don't think we need to massively overhaul anything. Luckily for us, this season, contracts are not an issue. Every single player has a contract that runs at least until 2027. Looking at the finances at the club, though, show that I'm not too sure why we are rated as a okay finance team. We have a balance of 43,000. We have a transfer budget of 84,000. And you can see here that we do run the club quite bizarrely. It does run into financial difficulties at times, and then the board will inject a massive amount of money, 539,000, which we then ran down to 127. We got a bit back after winning the league, but it's now down to 43,000. So once again, we're in that dilemma of, do we go and try and sign a star player with the 84,000 we've got on the transfer budget, or do we look after the cash until we get Champions League revenue? In terms of the wage budget, though, we are absolutely fine. 11,979 spent, 19,000 is the wage budget. So the big dilemma is with the transfer budget. With the money that's there, what kind of players will we sign? And the answer to that question would be 2 players. We have 1 player we have signed who has already joined the club, and we have 1 player who has signed and will be a future transfer. Let's start things off by looking at the player who has already joined, and I'll show you the future transfer in just a second. So the player who has already joined is an American. Well, in fact, both players are Americans. Once again, we have gone down the same route that we went down to sign Owen Silva. This player has come from Mississippi Brilla, and he is Sean Wagner. Looking at his profile and his attributes, you can see that he's going to be perfect at the club. He joins us as a striker, and I think, looking at his record of 32 goals in 73 appearances for Mississippi Brilla, he should set the league on fire. He has 13 for pace, 14 acceleration, 16 for finishing, 18 for determination. I think the biggest problem we are going to have is keeping him at the club. But for this season, we are at least going to get to see what he is capable of in our league. The other player that we have coming into the club in future is Mike Ternari. He's due to join in November. Another American who come from New York City's development team, their academy. He's a right-footed centre-back who has good tackling, he has good heading, good bravery, aggression, good natural fitness. The only thing I would say about him is I would have liked it if he was a little bit more determined, but it's something that hopefully, as he develops into his role at the club, will start to develop along with him. So only 2 signings coming in. We didn't spend a single penny in terms of the money. The squad also, as I did say, was a little bit light. So it was a little bit disappointing we couldn't get 1 or 2 more players in. But definitely for this season, I think that we will have enough to at least defend our title and hopefully have a good run in the Champions League. We would kick off the 26-27 season and the defence of our Liga 1 title on the road at newly promoted Swijara FC. Unfortunately for them, new American striker Sean Wagner would hit the ground running as he scores a hat-trick on his debut in a 3-1 win. Next up would be the visit of Percy Carbo. They would put up a good fight by forcing an equaliser after we took the lead. Goals from Silva and Ramdani, though, would give us 3 more points. We would make it 9 points from 9 to start the season with the demolition of PSPS. Goals from Maciel, Silva and a brace from Wagner would seal a 4-0 victory. If the first 3 league games of the season were plain sailing, game number 4 was definitely the one that caught us out. We would invite Borneo to the Patriot Candrabhaga Stadium and they would beat us 2-0 in front of our own fans. That embarrassment, though, would not last long. We would go on and win the very next game, beating Percy 2-0. We'd beat Burrito Patera 2-1. Persebaya 3-2. We'd beat Derry United 4-0. We would sweep aside Arima as we demolished them 5-1. That means at this point of the season, we would be top of the league, collecting 24 points from our first 9 games. That's 8 wins, that 1 loss. We would have an 18 goal difference. In terms of some of the stats for the league, Wagner would score 15 goals in his first 9 games. He would have an 8.22 average rating. Owen Silva would have 5 assists on the board, with Dwi Abbas getting 4, and Sean Wagner would have 5 Player of the Match awards. The other thing of note here is that the Champions League Elite group stage had been drawn. We have been grouped with Guangdong United from Thailand, Shanghai Port from China, and Yokohama Marinos from Japan. Certainly not the easiest group in the world. I've seen other groups that have teams that I thought were beatable. These 3 teams, though, might be fierce competition. I do think we're going to struggle, but we're going to give it everything that we've got. Our first taste of Champions League football would be absolutely mental. We would host Shanghai Port, and it would finish in a 4-4 draw. This game would have a bit of everything. There were early goals, late goals, equalisers, cards, and to top it all off, the points were shared. Our goals were scored by Maciel, Susanto, and a brace from new boy Sean Wagner. With the league and the Champions League now hotting up, we are about to hit a patch of very impressive form. After the 4-4 draw in the Champions League, we would beat Gresik United 3-0 in League 1. In our very next Champions League game, we would have another mental one. We would play Yokohama Marinos, and we would draw 3-3. Goals from Abbas, Silva and Wagner, and Alfin got himself sent off. Then, back in league action, we beat Bali United 2-1, PSM 3-0, Bayankara 5-3, Pasita 5-1. We would finally taste victory in the Champions League against Guangdong United as we beat them 3-1 with goals from Susanto, Wagner and Silva. And then we would also beat Persis 3-0 in Liga 1. That means at this point, we will have played 17 games. We are on 45 points and we have opened up a 10-point lead at the top of Liga 1. Importantly though, we are in second place in our group in the Champions League, only behind Shanghai Port who have 7 points. We have 5 points from our first 3 games. Yokohama Marinos are right on our tails. We were soon back in league action as we made the visit to Arima. Luckily for us, we would come out on top of a tight 2-1 game thanks to goals from Sean Wagner. Up next in the Champions League, we would welcome Yokohama Marinos. This was a tight game and we would win 1-0 thanks to Ramdani. Next up in the league would be Persik. After some close games, the goal scoring floodgates open once again. We scored 5 as we win 5-2. Goals from Abbas, Mudassir, Konagaya and a brace from Wagner secured us another 3 points. After 23 Liga 1 games, we find ourselves still top of the table. We have now played 23, won 21, drawn twice, have a goal difference of 44. We are on 63 points. The impressive thing there is we have now opened up an 18-point gap to PSM behind us. The other thing that would change at this point of the season is the Champions League. We have now gone through the group stage and we impressively managed to get through by the skin of our teeth. You can see that we finished second in the group behind Shanghai Port. They would get 12 points, we would get 11. And looking at some of the other groups, there are groups where the second place team did not qualify. And it means that luckily for us, we got 11 points and that was enough to qualify us for the second round. Our reward for getting through to the second round was a game against Suwon. After the winter break, we were back in league action against Persebaya. Luckily for us, there was no ring rust as we blast past them 6-0. Goals were scored by Maciel, Rinaldi, Hidayat and a hat-trick from Wagner. Following on from that would be the second round of the Champions League. We would be drawn against Suwon with the first leg away from home and a thrilling game would walk away from Korea with a 3-2 win. Goals from Maciel, Wagner and Kohler would give us the advantage. In the second leg, we would repeat the exact same scoreline as we go on to win 6-4 on aggregate. This time, it would be a brace for Owen Silva and a Wagner goal that would take us through to the next round. Our reward for beating Suwon in the second round of the Champions League would be a quarter-final tie against Shanghai Port. Sadly for us, we were overpowered in the first leg as we would lose 2-1. With it all to do in the second leg, we made the trip to China. Against all the odds, we would pull off a shock 1-0 victory. Despite our heroics, it would be heartbreak though, as it was 2-2 on aggregate and we would be eliminated on away goals. Despite our elimination from the Champions League, it was not all doom and gloom. We still had the league and the Indonesian Cup to look forward to. In terms of the league, we are now sat top of the league with 27 games played and 70 points. We have a 13-point gap and a game in hand. In terms of the Piala Indonesia, we are through to the semi-finals where we would face off against PSPS. Just as we were about to get to the business end of the season, along comes the bombshell news that our board decided to sell our best player. Sean Wagner would now be playing for Atlanta United after the board received an offer that they could not refuse. In fairness to Sean Wagner, he was probably a step above us anyway, but we didn't even get to keep him for a season. But look at some of the numbers that he managed to put up. So in his time at Bekasi, he would play in 34 games and he would score 46 goals. If we go into the career stats view, you can see at the bottom here, he would play 51 times and score 64 goals in Indonesian football. He's going to be an absolutely massive miss for us, but he's an absolute steal for Atlanta United. Despite us losing our best player, we would still go on to add our first silverware of the season as we would come out on top against Persija in a two-legged affair in the Indonesian Cup. That means that we have added a third trophy to the trophy cabinet. We have now won Liga 2, Liga 1 and the Indonesian Cup. With the team still reeling from the news of Sean Wagner's department, our team looked a little bit short on confidence, and we could only manage a 1-1 draw in the first leg of the playoff against PSPS. In the second leg of the semi-final though, we would come out all guns blazing. Goals from Alfin and a brace from Silva helped fire us into the playoff final as we would win 4-3 on aggregate. The playoff final would be another two-legged affair against PSM. The first leg would be away from home as we managed to gain the upper hand with a 2-1 win. Goals from Silva and Dowd secured the game. In the second leg, we had the home support behind us, and that would help us go on to repeat the score from the first leg. We would win the game 2-1, and over the two legs, we would win 4-2 on aggregate. For the second season in a row, we would be crowned champions of Indonesia and would ensure that we would have another crack at the Champions League in season number 4. After our trophy lift and us celebrating winning Liga 1 for back-to-back seasons, the last thing to do is have a look at the season review and start to show you some of the prep work for season number 4. Kicking off with the season review then, our two trophies are proudly on display there. We have our Liga 1 title for the second season in a row. We also have our Indonesian Cup on display. Let's look at the new arrivals. So the game is only displaying one new arrival, which is Mike Tenari. Bearing in mind we did sign Sean Wagner and lose Sean Wagner all in the space for season. That means that Tenari automatically gets our signing of the season. He would go on and play 19 times with 9 further substitute appearances, score 1, assist 1 and have a 6.72 average rating, which I think is a little bit harsh against him because he has played some really good football and I think he's definitely one that will develop into the future. Just a quick look at the transfers out for the season. So Sean Wagner is here, 180,000 we got for him. And he has gone on to only play once and score twice for Atalanta United. But as we showed you, he would score a lot of goals for us. The other player that left the club that we actually didn't pick up on during the season was Yui Ono. We were in the same position. The board got an offer of £86,000 for him and they took it. Going into the season's results then, once again, we are top of Liga 1. We would win the championship and this time around we would win it by 16 points from Persic. Going into the playoffs, we would absolutely smashed through all of the season, and we have done fantastically well to get another title on the board. In terms of the Champions League, so it was quite a difficult group that we got drawn in, but we put up brave fights against Shanghai, Yokohama and Guangdong through the group stages. We then drew Suwon Samsung Blue Wings, beat them home and away, and then unfortunately we would fall to Shanghai on penalties. In terms of the Indonesian Cup, we would breeze through that all the way to the final, where we would beat Persija over 2 legs. Looking then at some of the moments to remember, our biggest win was a 6-0 victory against Persebaya. Our match to remember was the 4-4 draw in the Champions League, which was absolutely mental. And our goal of the season would go to Owen Silva. He would score that in the 3-2 victory against Suwon. In terms of our finances and our reputation, so finally we have taken a step forward. We were previously a 1-star national. We are now a 1.5-star national. We have no new sponsorship deals for the season and no sponsorship deals for the season. In terms of the annual revenue, we have £25,000 worth of sponsorship. We are up in terms of broadcasting, corporate and hospitality, competition prize money. We won nearly £600,000 more, and our match day commercial and retail is also up. In terms of the merchandise sales, our most popular shirts are Silva, Cola, Sutopo, Konagaya and Koyo Maciel. Now it makes you wonder how many shirts we would have sold had Sean Wagner been here till the end of the season. Owen Silva was there. In terms of how we lined up across the season, so Setho goalkeeper, Ramdani, Rinaldi, Sutopo and Abbas, Kola, Agung and Konagaya. Then it's Silva, Wagner and Maciel up the top. I think it was devastating what those three could do in the final third of the pitch. In terms of the accolades this season, we did not win Manager of the Year. Strange one. We did win Manager of the Month for September and October. And then in terms of the club awards, Owen Silva was the Fans Player of the Season. He was also the Young Player of the Season. Mike Tonari got Signing of the Season by default. Goal of the Season went to Owen Silva. He also got Top Goal Scorer, Most Assists, Most Player of the Match awards and Highest Average Rating, which is a little bit of a shame because it would have all gone to Sean Wagner had he still been at the club. Because as you can see on the right hand side, 64 goals in a single season, 46 in terms of league goals, 4 goals in a single game a couple of times. Owen Silva would get the most assists by player in the season with 23. Wagner most player of the matches with 17. Then we would get highest transfer fee received. The actual fee was 134 up front. And then we will get the other 46 in add-ons and future fees. Quickest goal, 16 seconds. And youngest ever player was Mohamed Pernoan at 15 years, 326 days. So, Bekasi came along, better than anybody expected. Carried the form from mid-season all the way to the title. Looked quality when going in the middle of the year. Few would have expected this outcome, but we have won both competitions. So in terms of the timeline, so Wagner broke the record with 9 goals in a single campaign for the Indonesian Cup. We then won the Liga 1. We had a record points haul with 85. Wagner scored 46 goals in a single season, breaking that record. Wagner made an instant impact in winning the Indonesian League 1 Player of the Year award the same season he joined the club and left the club. And Dwi Abbas showed great work being done in the youth setup by winning Indonesian League 1 Young Player of the Year. And then obviously Wagner here, 64 goals in a single season. Fantastic. The problem there is, how are we going to replace those goals going into season number 4? So looking at the finances firstly, thanks to our success in the Champions League and also winning back-to-back titles, we now have an overall balance of 1.3 million and a transfer budget of 328,000. With that being a lot healthier, we can go out and really start to invest in the playing squad. I have a feeling we're going to need to because we were a bit thin anyway, and that has carried on throughout the season. Now losing 2 key strikers means we're going to have to replace them. We're also going to have a look at things as we go forwards. I think there is definitely room for improvement across the board. We've also, in good news for the club, we've managed to secure all the contracts of all the players at least until the end of the next season. And I think we're definitely going to have a look at a goalkeeper, a striker or two, and probably a central defender or a defensive midfielder. In an ideal world, we'll sign all of them. It's the 1st of June 2027. We have not long been crowned Indonesian champions for the second time. We're going to show you everything that we do in the preparation for season number 4, starting off by looking at the club info page. You can see we are still a 1.5-star national reputation team with 3-star OK finances. We have 2-star training facility and 2-star youth facility at this point in the save. Our key players: Chihiro Konagoya is still our club captain. Mr. Reliable has never let me down, and he's the man that I'm going to put in charge of lifting as many trophies as he can get his hands on. The key player in the save at the moment is Owen Silva, 20-year-old American who came to us a couple of seasons ago and has really started to come into his own. He's developing nicely, and I do have a few concerns that we might not be able to hold him for too much longer, just like with Sean Wagner, but hopefully he will stick around with us till the end. And our hot prospect for this season is Mohamed Purnawan. He has just come to the club in our most recent youth intake, and he's a player that we're going to look to develop for the future, and I think he could become a star. Looking at the club finances then, we have £1.3 million in the bank. We have £338,000 as a transfer budget. We have a wage budget of £19,778. We are only spending £12,000. We do have £17,000 committed as spending for the next season though. So with the money that we have in the bank, we probably need to spend it wisely and work within our budgets. And that is exactly what we would do. We know that we need to strengthen the squad to have another run at the Champions League and also defend our Liga 1 title. So we would go out and sign some free transfers that would help us to get some quality into the team and also spend a little bit of cash. Let's look at the players that we would bring in. So the first player we brought in was Juni Antara. He is a player that comes to us from Bali United on a free transfer. At the age of 32, he's not going to get any better, but we have a relatively young locker room now, and we need a player with a bit of a sensible head who can go in and start to help those younger players to really come out of their shells. And Juni Antara, as a full Indonesian international, is a player that I think can fit that role. The next player that we brought in also fits that model of experienced player. After we lost Sean Wagner at the end of last season, we needed somebody to score goals, and with Ezra Walian being able to play in a number of positions, we know we can shift him around the formation, and hopefully we can start to see replication of what Sean Wagner was doing in terms of goals from Ezra Walian. The next player that we brought in was Max Christoffel, another player who can play in a number of positions, both as a left-back, centre-back or a defensive midfielder, another Indonesian international, and another player who comes in at the age of 23, but is already experienced of playing in bigger leagues, having been at Feyenoord and Willem II in Holland. The next player that we brought in was Emmanuel Nimley. We went down the same path that we did for Sean Wagner and for Owen Silva and also Mike Tenari, and we went back to America to look at the amateur leagues. Now we found a player called Emmanuel Nimley. He's a goalkeeper. We found him at Ventura County and we picked him up because he looked interesting. Straight away we noticed that we needed a new goalkeeper going into the season, with our former #1 goalkeeper not really getting any better, and we look in the long term to try and replace him. And Emmanuel Nimley was the one that fitted the bill. He comes to us as a 20-year-old and he will only get better as the game goes on. The final player that we would sign would be a player called Eberth. He's the only player that we spent money on, £15,000 to be exact. And he is a player that, once again, is looking to replicate the goals that Sean Wagner has vacated by leaving the team. And he comes to us from San Bernardo in Brazil. He has also played for some bigger clubs, Goiás and Coritiba. So we know that the quality is there. Just can we get the best out of him? Fingers crossed we can, because I think he's a player that will suit our team down to the ground. So, with that being said, those are the transfers that we did, the business that we have brought in. We only spent £15,000 to try and keep those budgets balanced, but I think now the squad is looking quite bolstered, and we are looking forward to going into the first games of Season 4. Season 4 would continue on from exactly where we left off last season. The team would come back from pre-season in fine form, and thanks to Christoffel, Kohler and Maciel, we would win our opening fixture against Arema 4-0. That game, though, looked like it was just a tune-up match, as we really hit our stride in the second game of the season. We would completely have our own way with Gresik United as we unleashed a 9-1 victory to stamp our mark early. Goals from Christofel, Silva, Sutopo, Kohler and Eberth made sure that we had 6 points from 6. In the third game, things would go absolutely crazy, as for some reason both defences decided they would just have a day off and stayed at home. This would lead to an end-to-end affair with Bayankara as we fought hard to outbattle them in a 4-3 victory thanks to 4 goals from Ezra Walian. After the first 11 league games of the season, we would be sitting pretty at the top of Liga 1 once again. With those 11 games, we would play 11, win 10, draw just once and would be undefeated in the first 11 games. We would have a goal difference of 29, we would have 31 points from those 11 games, we would have a lead over the second place team, which is PSM, of 3 points. Further behind them, we had already built up a 7-point lead over PSS. In terms of some of the stats for the league, Ezra Walian would be our top goal scorer at this point with 8 goals, getting 4 in a single game. He would also have 3 Player of the Match awards, and Nimley would hit the ground running as our new goalkeeper would have 6 clean sheets after 11 games. If we look at the other competitions, we can see the Champions League has now been drawn, and we were put in a group with Incheon from Korea, Shanghai Port from China, and Port from Hong Kong. This looks like a difficult group, but with the players that we have added into the squad in the transfer window, I really believe that we are going to have a great shot of qualifying, whether that be in second place, or I actually think we have a great chance of winning this group. As for the Indonesian Cup, that will start on the 27th of October. So for the time being, we're going to turn our attention to the Champions League. In the first Champions League game of that group, we would play against Shanghai Port. With the Chinese champions visiting the Patriot Stadium, we would continue our impressive form as we blow them away in a fantastic 3-1 win thanks to goals from Walian, Christofel and Owen Silva. After 20 Liga 1 games, you can see there is a bit of a pattern emerging as we are still sat top of Liga 1 and we are now building a commanding lead. After the first 20 games, we have won 19 of those. We have drawn just once. We are still yet to taste defeat in Liga 1. We have a goal difference of 54 and 58 points. And more importantly for us, we now have opened up a 14-point gap to Persija, who have leapfrogged PSM into second place. Looking at some of the stats from the league, Owen Silva is now our leading goal scorer with 14 goals. He also has our highest average rating with 7.61. Dwi Abbas has 9 assists on the season. Owen Silva has 5 Player of the Match awards and Ezra Walian has 4. And Nimley is going to be the find of the season, surely. 10 clean sheets from his first 20 games, and he is really on a roll as our number 1 goalkeeper. In terms of the other competitions, we have now played 4 games in the Champions League, and it's the same story there. We are topping the group, played 4, won 4, goal difference of 8, and 12 points means we have a 5-point gap over Shanghai Port, who are in second. And in the Indonesian Cup, we have been drawn against PSGC as we are in the second round of the Indonesian Cup. Back into league action now, and we are showing absolutely no signs of slowing down whatsoever. The latest victims at the Patriot Stadium would be PSIS, who we shot down in a 5-0 clinical victory thanks to goals from Maciel, Silva and Christofel. We would follow that up with an equally impressive win against Arema. They would also visit the Patriot Stadium and be blown away. This time it would be a 4-1 scoreline as we pick up 3 more points thanks to Kohler, Ramdani, Silva and Sutopo. And that means after 24 league games we still find ourselves sat top of the pile in Liga 1 as we have now played 24, won 21, drawn 3, are still undefeated as we eye up that invincible season with just 10 league games to go. We have a goal difference of 58 and 66 points, building up a lead over PSM, who have leapfrogged back into second place, where they have 53 points, and we have that 13-point cushion going into those last 10 games. Looking at some of the stats in the league, Owen Silva, 14 league goals, eBirth, 7.6 average rating, Dwi Abbas has 9 assists still. Owen Silva has 5 Player of the Match awards, and Nimley, still impressive as ever, 24 games, 11 clean sheets for him. In terms of the other competitions, we would go and win our Champions League group as group winners. We would be rewarded with a second round tie against Vissel Kobe. And in the Indonesian Cup, we would make it through to the semi-finals, where we would play a two-legged game against Dewey United. But we are turning our attention back to the Champions League once again. And in that second round tie, we would welcome the champions of Japan to the Patriot Stadium first. We would look to build ourselves an advantage in the tie, and we would play some brilliant football and win the first leg 4-2 thanks to goals from Ezra Walian, Dwi Abbas and Croquet. In the return leg though, things would be far more difficult once we were in Japan. We had to decide whether to try and defend our lead, and that left us with the problem of not trying to overcommit players. This led to a nervy performance where we would lose 3-2 on the day, but progress 6-5 on aggregate. In the quarterfinals, we would be paired off against the champions of Thailand, as we face off against Buriram United. With the first leg being at home, we would once again look to build a lead, and that is exactly what we did. We would have a 3-1 victory thanks to goals from Ramdani, Kohler and Maciel. In the second leg, we once again had the dilemma of not overcommitting. This time though, we were strong. We would leave Thailand with a 1-1 draw and a place in the semi-finals of the Champions League. So with our place in the semi-final of the Champions League guaranteed, let's quickly turn our attention back to the league form. So the league phase of Liga 1 is now complete, and we would finish top of the league phase, playing 34, winning 28, drawing 5 and agonisingly only losing once. That one defeat would come at the hands of Persib at home in a 4-3 defeat. We would finish with 74 goal difference and 89 points, meaning that we would win the league phase by 23 points. But as we know, in Indonesia, the league phase is nice to win, but it all comes down to the playoffs as to whether we are going to be crowned champions. Looking at some of the stats across the season then, Owen Silva, 19 goals. He also would be our leading average rated player with 7.48. Dwi Abbas, 7.46. In terms of assists, Dwi Abbas would get 12. Owen Silva, 7 Player of the Match awards, and Nimley would have a very impressive first season. 15 clean sheets from a possible 34 games. So as we know, we are in the semi-finals of the Champions League. We would be drawn against Kashiwa Reysol, and we're going to look at that in just a second. We are also into the semi-finals of the Indonesian Cup, where we would play against Dewey United. But we are now going to have a crazy run of games, starting off with the Champions League semi-final. The next couple of weeks would see a crazy run of games for the club. It all kicked off with the home leg of the Champions League semi-final. We welcomed Kashiwa Reysol to the Patriot Stadium and promptly beat them 2-0 thanks to goals from eBirth and Owen Silva. In the away leg, it was as it has been in this competition. We would defend our lead with our lives, as we would get a massive 1-1 draw in Japan and manage to book our place in the Champions League final for the very first time. Off the back of that Champions League semi-final second leg, we were then thrown straight into a two-legged Indonesian Cup final against PSS. In the first leg, we would do all the damage, as we put up a dominant display to run out 4-1 winners with goals from Owen Silva, Ezra Walian and KO Maciel. Despite our big lead from the first leg, there was no sitting back in the return fixture. We would attack from the get-go and walk away with a 2-0 victory and a 6-1 aggregate score, as once again we become Indonesian Cup winners. Fresh off of winning the Indonesian Cup, the next game is where the stakes were really beginning to raise. We would walk into the first leg of the Champions League final with a lot of confidence. Sadly for us though, despite our best efforts, the bubble would burst, as we would be defeated 4-2 in the first leg of the Champions League final. With us chasing Al Ittihad's lead from the first leg, we had nothing to lose in the second. We would come out all guns blazing, but sadly for us, it was not going to be enough, as we lose 2-0 on the day, 6-2 on aggregate, and our Champions League hopes die in the final. After the Champions League heartbreak, we had to turn our attentions back to the domestic league, as we dust ourselves down for the first leg of the playoff final. Luckily, there would be no Champions League hangover, as we were back to our best, beating PSS 3-1 thanks to goals from Ethan Kohler and Ezra Walian. With our first leg victory, we were in a strong position in the tie and could play the second leg with ease. This would lead to a comfortable 2-0 victory in the second leg, an aggregate score of 5-1, and that means that once again we have become the champions of Indonesian football. So with all the on-field action now complete, the last thing as always to do is look at the season review. You can see our 2 trophies from the season proudly on display there, our Liga 1 title and our Indonesian Cup trophy too. Let's kick things off by looking at the new players this season. So signing of the season goes to Ezra Walian. He's a player at the age of 30 who was brought in to be a wise head in a young dressing room, and he has played some fantastic football. 36 starts, 34 goals, 3 assists as a 7.31 average rating. The other striker to come in was Eberth from Sao Bernardo in Brazil. 25 appearances, 19 goals, 2 assists. Max Christoffel is a player that came to us from Willem Drey in Holland. Played 53 times, 15 goals, 19 assists and a 7.19 average rating. Juni Antara was another player with a wise head in a young locker room. 32-year-old fullback, managed to make 56 appearances in total, 4 goals and 10 assists. He actually played the role of mentor fantastically across the season. Player that I think probably would have got my nod for player of the season or signing of the season was Emmanuel Nimley. We signed him from the American Amateur Leagues, Ventura County. Played 58 games across the season and was absolutely immense in goal, firmly cementing him as our number 1 goalkeeper. The next player to come in was Jim Croker. We didn't actually cover this one at the start of the season. He came in later. We needed another striker just to bolster us up in the position. He would play 25 times, 14 goals and 4 assists. Looking at the season results then, so we would win the league phase of the Liga 1 by 22 points in the end from PSS. We would go on that run where we almost went the entire season invincible. 1 defeat in a 4-3 loss at home. In the Champions League, here is our run to the final. You can see that we didn't play well enough in the final to win the game, and we did ourselves no injustice across the course of the competition, just couldn't get over the line when it mattered the most. And this is our run to the Indonesian Cup, resulting in that 6-1 victory in the 2-legged final. Looking then at some moments to remember, the biggest win of the season was the 9-1 victory against Gresik United. A 2-0 victory against Port was our match to remember in the Champions League. And goal of the season would go to Ramdhani with a top draw goal from our left back, Ramdhani, as he hits a fierce effort from 20 metres out. In terms of our finances, in terms of the club reputation actually, we were a 1.5-star national reputation team. We have now moved up to a 2-star team. We are doing no new sponsorship deals across the season. Sponsorship is up, broadcast revenue is up, corporate and hospitality is up, competition prize money is also up, thanks to the Champions League run, and Matchday commercial and retail is also up. We sold £2,350 worth of merchandise, with 102 shirts sold. Walian is clearly our most popular player. Silva, Christoffel, Eberth and Kohler also shifting some shirts. Looking at our lineup across the season, this is probably about right, but we did shift away from the 4-3-3 towards the end of the season. We went to a 4-2-3-1. But Nimley, Christoffel, Rinaldi, Topo and Abbas, Hidayat, Kanagaya, Kohler, Ko Maciel, Owen Silva and Walian in the 4-3-3 probably would have been right had we have seen that out to the end. So in terms of the awards, no manager of the season this year, but we did win manager of the month for July, September, October and March. In terms of the players, Owen Silva, highest average rating. Dwi Abbas, young player of the season. Signing of the season went to Ezra Walian. Ramdani with goal of the season. Walian had 34 goals. Abbas 21 assists. Walian 10 player of the match awards. Dwi Abbas 7.4 highest average rating. And then record breakers, most goals in a game by Ezra Walian. He also had that for a league match. Most clean sheets in a season with 24 across the entire season. Manuel Nimley has been immense. Conor Goya now has the most league appearances by a player for the club with 129. Most goals by a player is Owen Silva with 54. Our oldest player this season was Johnny Antara with an age of 32 years, 349 days. He also took the crown of being the oldest goal scorer for the club. So, history in the making. We motored clear of the rivals in the middle of the season, but it wasn't enough to turn their challenge into victory. Okay, that's crazy, considering we have literally won the league. Not too sure what this guy here, Sayaril Setayawan, is talking about, because we did win. Maybe he's talking about the Champions League, but if it's the league, definitely doesn't know what he's talking about. And here again, trendy pick for the title, but they fell short at the end, even though we won the league. Game's broken at this point, not too sure what's going on there. But still, we are now record breakers as we finished with 89 points in League 1 to set a new club record. We did win the league with 16 clean sheets for Emmanuel Nimley in goal. And Owen Silva was named Indonesian League 1 Player of the Year. So quickly, a few things to look at here. Let's go to the club finances. Going into the new season, we have £2.6 million in the bank. Transfer budget of £216,000. We have a £34,000 wage budget with £18,000 of that being spent. In terms of the squad, we have a decent sized squad now. Not too sure if there's too many more players we will add to that as we go forwards. I think we are looking at certainly a league winning squad for next season, but that Champions League is the one that we really want. The date is the 1st of June 2028 and we have not long been crowned Indonesian champions for the third time, and we are now preparing for the 5th season. Let's kick things off by looking at the club info page as always. So we are now a 2-star national reputation team with 4-star secure finances. We have 2.5-star training facilities, 2.5-star youth facilities. We have half-star for both junior coaching and youth recruitment. As always, our key players: Chiro Konagoya is still my club captain. Mr. Reliable got his hands on both the Liga 1 trophy and the Indonesian Cup last season. Hopefully, we're going to give him some more trophies to lift this season. Our key player remains Owen Silva. The young American winger is quick, he's dynamic, and he's developing into a player that is doing us proud. Just hope we can keep him for the final season, and our chairman doesn't get tempted to start doing what he did with Sean Wagner a couple of years ago and flog him before we have our use out of him. Our hot prospect for this season is Heru Mardian Soya. He's a player who has not long come through our youth ranks and one that we're going to look to develop already in our first team. We're going to push him straight in there and see what he has. Looking forward into the season then, in terms of the finances, we now have £4.6 million in the bank thanks to our Champions League exploits. Unfortunately, didn't win the competition but did get to the final, so a nice new injection of cash there. We have a transfer budget of £230,000, 34,000 in terms of the wage budget, but we are spending 17,000. So we have a good budget to go and strengthen the squad. The question is, how many transfers do we actually need? And the answer to that question is actually 5. We would go out and actually spend quite a lot of our budget. Now, I felt it was worth it considering we are pushing for the Champions League this season, having got to the final previously. We need those players that are going to get us over the line. But also, we need to mix youth and experience. So the players that we have signed for this season, the first player is Kernawan Luthby. He's a player that was at Arema previously. He has left them now to come to us on a free transfer, and I think we have got ourselves an absolute steal. Ivan Ridwan is next. He's the player that we spent most of the money on. He's a player that came through at Persipura, went to Persebaya, and he's a defender that looks like he's ready built to be a star in this league. 19 years old, already capped by Indonesia. Fingers crossed he goes on to perform fantastically during the season for us. The next player was Heri Ramdhani, another player that was bought through at PSPS, left them and has come to us on a free transfer. The crazy thing to notice here, he has 20 for finishing. Now, the rest of the attributes aren't all fantastic, but 20 for finishing and 16 for first touch means that he will probably get chances. He's going to start the season in the under-21s, but we need to throw him in to see what he's capable of at some point along the way. The next player to come in was Sani Rizki. This is another one that I was saying we need to balance that experience and youth, and having signed quite a few new gen players, we also need those older heads on the shoulders. So he's a central midfielder. That is a current Indonesian international, and I think he's one that will really fit in and slot in well into our midfield. And the final player is another youth player, Fauzan Triono. He comes to us also from Arema, another player who is a free transfer. He can play as a defensive midfielder or a central midfielder, and he's a player that I think will grow as the season goes in. So, £140,000 spent. We are hurtling towards season number 5. Hopefully, these are the players that are going to push us to the next level in season 5. Our league campaign would kick off in brilliant style as we hit the ground running in Liga 1. A dominant display in the first game of the season would see us demolish Persita 7-0. Goals from Eberth, Triono, Silva and Lutfi got us 3 points on the board instantly. We would carry that fine form into the second game of the season too. We would welcome Bali United to the Patriot Stadium. 2 goals from Eberth would see us dispatch of Bali United, and we would move on to 6 points from a possible 6. After the first 12 games of the season, we would find ourselves top of Liga 1, and we would boast a perfect record. 12 games played, 12 games won, a goal difference of 39, and we have 36 points, already boasting an 11-point lead at the top of the table. Looking at the stats, Ezra Walian has really stepped up this season. He has 15 goals in the first 12 games. Eberth also has 11. Dwi Abbas has an 8.17 average rating, with Kernuan Lutfi getting an 8.12. Dwi Abbas would have 9 assists. Lutfi would have 4 Player of the Match awards, with Walian 3. And once again, Nimli is on form. He has 7 clean sheets from a possible 12. Looking at the rest of the competitions, the Champions League group stage has been drawn. This time around, we will be put in a group with Pathum United, Fukuoka and Jeonbuk. That is a group that I really fancy us to go and win. I think that we can get out of this group with our eyes closed. The way we are playing football this season and the way we played last season in the Champions League, there isn't a single team there that really makes me feel scared of our guaranteed path to get to the second round of the Champions League. I think we are a shoo-in to win this group. Indonesian Cup doesn't start until the 25th of October, so we're going to turn our attention back to the league and the Champions League. Our first game of this season's Champions League would see us travel to Thailand to face Pathum United. We would take the away day adventure in our stride as we look comfortable in a 4-1 victory with goals from Walian, Tinari, Kola and Abbas. Back in the league, we would keep our perfect record intact. The next game up would be against Persipura, and we would walk away with a 2-1 win and 3 more points thanks to Ramdhani and Mardi Ansaya. So that means as of the 3rd of February, we are still sat top of Liga 1. We are now through 23 league games and we have a record of 21 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, a goal difference of 82 already. 64 points on the board puts us 14 points clear of Persebaya in second place, and they are 13 points clear of Persik, who are in third. Sadly for us, another shot at an invincible season goes by the wayside. A 3-2 defeat to Persija put pay to that. Looking at some of the stats in the league then, Ezra Walian has 27 league goals this season. The man has taken another step forward despite being another year older. Eberth has 18 goals also. The average ratings are dominated by our players this season. Owen Silva, Lutfi, Abbas and Walian all scoring 7.8 or above, with Silva on an 8.26 average rating so far. Dwi Abbas is an assist machine, 17 assists in the league this season. Walian 5 Player of the Match awards, Mardi Answer getting 4 Player of the Match awards, and Nimli 9 clean sheets this season from 23. Isn't quite as good as last season, but he's still proving why he came in as our number 1 goalkeeper at the age of 20. In the other competitions, we would successfully get through our group as group winners, pushing aside all of the other teams, and we would be rewarded for that with a second round tie against Buriram United. And in a shock defeat, we were knocked out of the Indonesian Cup in the 3rd round by Persis Solo. Now, it is a bit of a shock, but also we rotated the team heavily with our eyes on the middle prize. The Champions League is where we want to be. We want to be lifting that trophy and firmly put us top of the biggest teams in Asia. So let's push forwards into the season and see, can we get to that promised land? It was time to play in the 2nd round of the Champions League, and the first leg would see Buriram United visit us at the Patriot Stadium. Well, I bet they wished that they had stayed at home. We absolutely destroyed them. A 6-0 victory with goals from Luthpi, Silva, Eberth, Croquet and Kohler ensure that we are already into the quarter-finals. With that commanding lead, the second leg was a mere formality. No need to defend, we just attacked with everything we had, and the result was a 4-0 victory and a 10-0 aggregate score as we move on to the quarter-finals. In the quarter-finals, we would be paired off with old rivals Shanghai Port. The first leg would be at the Patriot Stadium, and once again, we would build up a commanding lead. This time, a 5-1 victory with goals from Ramdani, Walian, Silva and Luthpi would ensure that we would have 1 foot in the semi-finals. But before we could be confirmed in the semi-finals, we would have to go to China and navigate a tricky second leg. This tie would go absolutely crazy as both defences decided just not to turn up. We got dragged into an 8-goal 4-4 thriller. Goals from Maciel, Tinari and Silva mean that we go through to the semi-finals of the Champions League with a 9-5 aggregate score. So after 28 league games, we find ourselves still sat top of the pile in Liga 1 as we lead the way in the league stage. 28 games have been played, 26 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. We have a goal difference of 101 and we have 79 points. The next team below us, 66, giving us a 13-point lead, and we have a game in hand at this stage of the season. In some of the stats though, look at this for a race for the Golden Boot in Liga 1. Ezra Walian has got 30 goals, but behind him, Flavio Silva scored 29 for Percy Bayer. These two are really having a great scrap. In terms of the average ratings, it's still Owen Silva that is leading the way. Dwi Abbas has 22 assists on the season and Nimli 12 clean sheets. In terms of the competitions now, our reward for getting past the quarterfinals of the Champions League is a semi-final tie against Vissel Kobe, and obviously we were knocked out in the Indonesian Cup. So all eyes turn back to the Champions League. Can we make the final for a second successive season? To get back to the Champions League final, we would have to get past Vissel Kobe. The first leg of the tie would be played away from home in Japan. We would put in a professional display as we walked away from Japan with a 3-1 victory thanks to goals from Silva and Walian. With the damage done in Japan, we just had to keep it tight at home. We did that with a 1-0 win to return to the ACL final. With us turning our attention back to the league for just a moment, we have now completed the league part of the Liga 1 season, and we would finish top of Liga 1 once again. This time around, we would play 34 games, we would win 31 of those games, draw just the once, lose twice, have a goal difference of 119, would finish on 94 points, which means that we would win the league by 15 points from Persebaya, and they would have a gap of 22 points to the team who finished below them, which was Persija. Looking at some of the stats, unfortunately for Ezra Walian, his goals dried up towards the end of the season, and that means that Flavio Silva would win the Golden Boot with 34, but 31 is a valiant effort to go and try and win the Golden Boot. Our two strikers actually would have 55 goals between them in the league. In the average ratings, Owen Silva would come out on top with an 8.13 across the season. Tui Abbas would get 26 assists. What an assist machine this player is. Nimley would get 16 clean sheets from 34 games this season, and once again cement exactly why he's our number one goalkeeper. So that means that with the league part out of the way, we will have the playoffs, the semi-final and the final to look forward to. But up next is the one that we are all looking forward to. We are going back to the Champions League final. We are going to get a chance at revenge against Al Ittihad. With the Champions League final being a two-legged affair, we would have to head to Saudi in the first leg as we looked for our revenge from the previous season. And revenge was exactly what we got. No longer were we the timid team of 12 months ago. We bossed the first leg, winning the game 4-2 with goals from Lutfi, who got a hat-trick, and Owen Silva. With the scoreline in our favour, we knew we had to complete the job in front of our own fans. This was a task we would do with ease. Once again, we would boss the match as we outfought Al Ittihad all over the pitch. The result was a 3-1 win and a 7-3 aggregate score as we finally win the Champions League to secure our title as the biggest club in Asia. With the Champions League already in the bag, we had one final job to do, and that was win Liga 1 for a fourth time. In the first leg, we would travel to Persebaya as we looked to upset them on the road. And that is exactly what we did. Fresh from the Champions League win, we were on fire with a 5-3 victory and goals from Christofel and Walian alongside another hat-trick from Lutfi. With all the damage done on the road, it was party time at home as we came out to attack from the get-go. We were dominant in this game as we would run out 3-0 victors to seal the deal over two legs, and once again we would become crowned champions of Indonesian football. We have done it. 4 league titles in a row. So with all the on-field action completed, the last thing to do as always is to go through the season review, and where better place to start than on the homepage with our 2 trophies proudly there on display. We have won Liga 1 for the 4th time and for the first time in the club's history, and the first ever Indonesian team to win an Asian Champions League. There are our trophies. We have cemented our place as the current biggest team in Asia. Let's have a look then at how the new arrivals got on across the season. So the first thing you can notice is that Kurniawan Lutfi is our signing of the season. We got him on a free transfer from Arema, and I remember when I unveiled him I said that this player could be special. Our scouts were raving. I don't know why Arema would have let him go, because he has been brilliant, almost phenomenal. 39 games, 31 goals, 19 assists with an 8.18 average rating. Fauzan Triono, he would get 35 appearances, 7 goals and 6 assists. Ivan Ridwan, he would play 39 times with 2 goals and no assists, but 7.0 average rating for our centre-back. Sani Rizki, he would only get 3 games, but as I said, he was more of a mentor figure that we were looking for, an older head in and amongst the younger locker room, and he did a fantastic job in supporting some of our younger players. And finally, Heri Ramdani didn't get too much game time. If you remember, he started off in our youth team, but we did promote him to the full team, and he had 6 starts. He had 10 substitute appearances. Only scored once, but did have an assist as well, and was definitely one for the future. But when we have players such as Walian and Eberth scoring as many goals as they did this season, there wasn't really going to be much game time, especially when we went out of the Indonesian Cup early. So, in terms of the league, We would go on and win the league once again by 15 points in the league phase. We would then go into the playoffs and, as you've just seen, cement our 4th title in a row. In the Champions League, here is our run to the final. We would actually go and win every single game in the competition. No draws or losses in the group stage, and then no draws or losses in the run-up to the final. A fantastic competition this season we have played. We have been brilliant everywhere we go, home and away. We have been in top form. In terms of the Indonesian Cup, that would be the only blot on our copybook for the season. Percy Solo would beat us over 2 legs on penalties after 2-1 either way in the 2 legs. But as I said earlier on, heavily rotated team, and we weren't too fussed about it considering the longevity of what we were looking for in terms of the Champions League. In the moments to remember section, our biggest win would be a 9-1 victory against Persita, with goals from Maciel, Wallian, Silva and Lutfi. Match to remember would be a 6-0 victory against PSM. Goal of the season would go to club captain Chihiro Kanagaya. Defensive midfielder delights fans and pundits alike with a well-struck effort from distance against Gresik United. In terms of the finances, we are going to jump out of the save after this, so it's important that we have left the club where we are. So previously we were a national team with winning the ACL. Now we are a continental 3-star team, and we're going to leave the club as the biggest team in Asia. No new sponsorship deals, but sponsorship is up, broadcast revenue is up, corporate hospitality is up, competition prize money is up with that Champions League win, and match day commercial and retail is up. Our best selling shirts are Wallian, Eberth, Lutfi, Silva and Christopher. How did we line up? So with the change in formation, we have now got that reflected on screen here. So Nimli is in goal, Christopher, Ridwan, Tinari and Abbas, Triono and Konagaya, Silva, Lutfi, Maciel and Wallian. That is the exact lineup I would put out if I was forced to put out any lineup. We have been playing so well in the change 4-2-3-1. In terms of the accolades, I didn't get a single award this season despite winning the league for the 4th time. Not even a Manager of the Month award. I guess they like to rotate those awards in Indonesia. But still, in terms of the player awards across the season, the fans player of the season was Lutfi. Young player of the season was Lutfi. Signing of the season was Lutfi. Chiro Konagaya got goal of the season. Ezra Wallian was top goal scorer with 38. Dwi Abbas got 32 assists in a single season. Owen Silva, 13 player of the match awards. Lutfi, top average rating. And then in terms of the record breakers, we have Wallian, who got 4 goals in a single game again. Dwi Abbas, 32 assists. He also, though, had the worst discipline with 14 yellow cards and a red card. Chihiro Konagaya will go down as a club legend. 162 appearances, as well as lifting all of the trophies that we have. Owen Silva now has 75 league goals. He's the top goal scorer. Johnny Antara is our oldest player. Highest transfer fee paid was $138,000 for Ivan Ridwan, and Johnny Antara became the oldest goal scorer once again at 33 years and 182 days. In terms of history in the making, Bekasi CIty surged to a title challenge after really coming through the midway point of the season. Bekasi CIty motor clear of their rivals in the middle, but it wasn't enough to see their challenge turn into title victory. Again, this guy here needs sacking. Whoever... Siarhil Setawian. That's 2 seasons in a row he said that we haven't won the league, but here's my trophy, so yeah, we did. So, to round off the end of season review, Bekasi won right at the death of their ACL Elite tussle with Shanghai Port after a dramatic 92nd minute goal to seal the game 4-4. Bekasi CIty reached the final after a pulsating game against Kobe and was decided by an extremely late but timely 95th goal, ensuring it finished 1-0. We'd already won the first leg there, so not too sure what's going on with this end of season review. In terms of winning the ACL Elite, we beat all comers to become champions. Lutfi was magical, made 6 assists. We had a record points haul once again in Liga 1 with 94, and we were best of the best. Lutfi made an instant impact in winning Indonesian League 1 Young Player of the Year in the same season that he joined the club. So a fantastic way to round it out. If we were to go into another season, the board now have £5.6 million in the bank. £648,000 would be the transfer budget. Quickly, if we go into the club info and show you what's happening. So 3-star continental, 4-star finances, 3-star training facilities and youth facilities now. And we are starting to build that up. Chihiro Konagoya will go out as club captain and legend. He is a player that, despite not looking like everything, he was a player that I really could depend upon in the middle of the park. 162 appearances, 18 goals, and one of those players that we bought way back in the save. In fact, he came in the first season on a free transfer in Liga 2 and stuck with us the whole way. In terms of our key player, that would be Owen Silva, 22 years old now, and he really developed himself into one of the best players in the league. 121 appearances, 75 goals. Came to us in the 25-26 season on a free transfer from FC Dallas and did everything we asked of him. He really has developed himself into a fantastic player. So that is pretty much going to be that. We can see 1 AFC Champions League elite, 4 Liga 1 titles, 1 Liga 2 title and 2 Indonesian Cups. Considering that this team was so fresh and new, had nothing in the trophy cabinet, we have now gone and filled that up for them, and they can proudly say that they are the best club in Asia. Indonesia is such a fun league to manage in. It's a little bit crazy. There's so many games at the end of the season with all of the playoffs. The 2-legged things is crazy. The fixtures really do pile up, and once you've won the league, you think you've won the league, and then you have to win the playoffs and everything. It really does get crazy, but it's such an enjoyable experience. And on that note, I really want to thank every single person that watches this series, and more importantly, if you are from Indonesia and you have followed this series, let me know in the comment section down below. Are Bekasi CIty a team that could potentially do this in real life? Now, I know they have good owners at the moment. They have rich owners, and they are a team that are looking to push up. I have checked on them in real life, and they are having a really good season in the current season. But do you think they are a team that could reach the heights, certainly of winning Liga 1, but could they make an impact in terms of the Champions League? Also, let me know if you've enjoyed the series. I really enjoy having you here watching the videos, and I cannot say thank you enough. That is why this series existed, because I noticed in the analytics of YouTube, I have a high percentage of Indonesian viewers, and I really wanted to give something back to you, because you have overtaken the English people on my channel in terms of my most popular audience. So I really want to say thank you for that. But for this one, I'm going to leave it there. It's been fantastic managing FC Bekasi CIty, but I'm going to sign off with a Champions League win, a Liga 1 win, and I'm going to say thank you very much. I hope to see you on another video very soon.